Hi dear students. So in this session we are going to discuss about Clostridium tetani. Let's see few of the general characteristics of the genus Clostridium. It contains a large number of gram-positive spore-forming species, several of which are able to produce disease in humans. Most of the species are obligate anaerobes and some will be able to grow under microaerobic conditions. Soil and the intestinal tract are found to be the natural habitats of Clostridium. Historical aspects. Clostridium tetani is a causative organism of tetanus. Tetanus has been known from very early times to the ancient people who recognized the relationship between wounds and fatal muscle spasm. In 1884, Arthur Nicollier isolated the strychnine-like toxin of tetanus from free-living anaerobic soil bacteria. The etiology of the disease was further elucidated in 1819 by Anthony Carl and Giorgio Raton, who demonstrated the transmissibility of tetanus for the first time. They produced tetanus in rabbits by injecting their sciatic nerve with pus from a fatal human tetanus case in that same year. Sciatic nerve is a nerve which runs down the legs from the lower back. Later in 1889, Clostridium tetani was isolated from a human victim by Kitasato Shibasboro, who later showed that the organism could produce disease when injected into animals, and that the toxin could be neutralized by specific antibodies. In 1897, Edmund Knockaert showed that tetanus antitoxin induced passive immunity in humans and could be used for prophylaxis, that is prevention, and treatment. Tetanus toxoid vaccine was developed by P. Descombe in 1924 and was widely used to prevent tetanus induced by battle wounds during World War II. Let's check the morphology of the Clostridium tetani. It is a gram-positive thin rod and it has peritrichous flagella for motility. It contains granular inclusions which occur centrally and at the end of the cell. The organism produces round terminal spores which give it the appearance of a drumstick or tennis racket. The organism is usually found in soils and it is often carried by the horses and other animals. Electron microscopy shows that the cell wall is composed of 5 layers and the cytoplasmic membrane is of 3 layers. The cytoplasm is dense, granular, and contains ribosomes and polysomes. The nucleus in Clostridium tetani is compact and occupies a small part of the cell. This image shows the Clostridium tetani with the terminal spores location, and this one shows the sporulated and the vegetative phase of Clostridium tetani. Let's see the cultural characteristics of Clostridium tetani. It is an obligatory anaerobe that grows only in the absence of oxygen, and it grows on blood agar with advancing edges. In gelatin stab culture, it is having a fire-filtry appearance, and in Robertson cooked meat medium, it produces turbidity and gas. When it is grown in the meat medium, the meat is not digested, but it turns black. Also, in blood agar, first it shows alpha hemolysis, then it is followed by beta hemolysis. They also grow on sugar and blood agar at a pH range of 7.0 to 7.9 and at a temperature of 38 degrees Celsius. No growth will be occurring below 14 degrees Celsius and above 45 degrees Celsius. Sometimes a zone of hemolysis is produced around the colonies and it can be alpha hemolysis followed by beta hemolysis. Brain medium and bismuth sulfur agar are blackened by Clostridium tetani's growth. In Roberts cooked meat medium, turbidity and some gas formation occur and the meat is not digested but it turns black on prolonged incubation. On blood agar, fine translucent film of growth occurs And in the first phase there is alpha hemolysis, and which later develops into beta hemolysis, and it is due to the production of hemolysin or tetanolysin. In deep agar-shaped cultures, spherical fluffy balls of around 1 to 3 mm in diameter, made of filaments with radial arrangement, is formed. In gelatin stab culture, filtry appearance occurs with slow liquefaction. A uniform turbidity is produced on Kip-Tarozzi medium with liberation of gas and a peculiar odor as a result of proteolysis. And this image shows the inverted filtry appearance of Clostridium tetani in the gelatin stab culture. Coming to the biochemical properties, the Clostridium tetani does not ferment any carbohydrates, and Clostridium tetani causes slow gelatin liquefaction and produce no indole. So the indole test is negative for Clostridium tetani. The nitrates are rapidly reduced to nitrites, and the organism coagulates milk slowly, forming small flakes. Coming to the resistance of the Clostridium tetani, it survives boiling up to 3 hours, and they cannot survive autoclaving at 121 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. The spores are also relatively resistant to phenol and other chemical agents. Clostridium tetani produces an extremely potent exotoxin named tetanospasmin. It's a neurotoxin which causes muscle contraction, and another toxin called tetanolysin. It's a hemolysin which hemolyzes erythrocytes. Tetanolysin is related functionally and serologically to streptolysin O, and it belongs to a large group of oxygen-sensitive hemolysins from a variety of bacteria. In addition to erythrocytes, tetanolysin also lyses a variety of cells such as polymorphonuclear neutrophils, macrophages, fibroblasts, ascites, tumor cells, and platelets. The next toxin is the tetanospasmin. It is as mentioned earlier, it is a neurotoxin. It is synthesized in the bacterium as a single polypeptide chain, but after its release by the lysis of the organism, a bacterial protease cleaves one peptide bond to yield 2 chains that remain linked together through a disulfide bond. The larger chain has a molecular weight of 1 lakh daltons, and it possesses specific receptors that bind to the toxin to the neuronal gangliosides. And the smaller peptide has a molecular weight of 50,000 daltons and is thought to exert the biologic effect of the toxin. The tetanospasmin is distributed in the blood and lymphatic system of the host. The toxin acts at several sites within the central nervous system, including the peripheral nerve terminals, the spinal cord, and the brain, and with the sympathetic nervous system. And then the toxin is taken up within the nerve axon and transported across the synaptic junctions until it reaches the central nervous system, where it is rapidly fixed to gangliosides at the presynaptic junctions of inhibitory motor nerve ending. The complete toxin then crosses the nerve cell membrane and is transported retrogradely into the inhibitory interneurons. There, by some unknown mechanism, the toxin will enter the interneurons and it will block the exocytosis of inhibitory transmitters like glycine and gamma aminobutyric acid. The final effect is that a spastic paralysis will be there, and it is characterized by the convulsive contraction of voluntary muscles. Because the spasm frequently involves the neck and jaws of the patient, the disease has been referred to as lockjaw. That is, the patient will be having difficulty in moving the neck and jaw area. And then the death ordinarily results from muscular spasm affecting the mechanism of respiration. When the patient cannot breathe properly due to the respiratory blockage, it will be resulting in death. Tetanus toxin is generated in living bacteria and is released when the bacteria lies, such as during spore germination or vegetative growth. A minimal amount of spore germination and vegetative cell growth are required for the toxin production. Clostridium tetani possesses 11 serological variants, and in them it differs primarily in flagellar antigens and in their ability to produce tetanospasm. The variant specificity is associated with the H antigen and tube specificity with the O antigen. The genes for toxin productions are encoded on a plasmid which is present in all the toxigenic strains. All strains that are capable of producing toxin produce identical toxins. Coming to the pathogenicity, the Clostridium tetani has little invasive power. When the washed spores are injected into the experimental animals, they do not germinate and they are destroyed by the phagocytosis process. Germination and toxin production occur only if favorable conditions exist, such as reduced oxygen reduction potential, devitalized tissues, and presence of foreign bodies. The toxin produced locally is absorbed by the motor nerve endings and transported to the central nervous system intraxonally. The toxin is specifically and avidly fixed by gangliosides of the gray matter of the nervous tissue. The tetanus toxin specifically blocks the synaptic inhibition in the spinal cord at inhibitory terminals that use glycine and GABA as neurotransmitters. The toxin will act presynaptically, and there is abolition of spinal inhibition, which causes uncontrolled spread of impulses initiated anywhere in the central nervous system. And this uncontrolled spread of impulses will be ultimately resulting in the muscle rigidity and spasm. Or in simple words, we can again define that the clinical manifestation of tetanus is caused by when the tetanus toxin blocks inhibitory impulses by interfering with the release of neurotransmitters including glycine and gamma aminobutyric acid, that is GABA, GABA, and this will lead to unopposed muscle contraction and spasm. Now let's see the clinical features of the symptoms of tetanus. The first one is the rhesus sardonicus, or a rigid smile. It is due to the contraction of the muscles at the ankle of mouth and frontals. Next one is the trismus, or the lockjaw. It is due to the spasm of masseter muscles. Then there is opisthotonus, or arc back. Here there is spasm of extensor of the neck, back and legs to form a backward curvature. Then there is muscle spasticity. Prolonged muscular action causes sudden, powerful and painful contraction of muscle groups, and this is called tetani. These episodes can cause fractures and muscle tears. Sometimes seizures may occur and the autonomic nervous system may also be affected. Loss of inhibition also affects preganglionic sympathetic neurons in the lateral gray matter of the spinal cord and produces sympathetic hyperactivity and high circulating catecholamine levels. Hypertension and tachycardia alternating with hypotension and bradycardia may also develop. Tachycardia refers to a rapid heartbeat that may be regular or irregular, and bradycardia refers to the slower than expected heart rate. And if the respiratory muscle is involved in this, there will be apnea. Apnea is the cessation of the breathing, that is, there is no movement of the muscles of inhalation. So, breathing will not be possible and this will be ultimately leading to death. And the other symptoms include drooling, excessive sweating, fever, hand or foot spasms, irritability, swallowing difficulty, uncontrolled urination, headache, high blood pressure, and a fast heart rate. In this you can see the opisthotonus, or the arc-backed symptom, lockjaw, rhesus sardonicus or rigid smile, and when the tetanus is affected for the neonatals, It's termed as tetanus neonatal. Now let's see the laboratory diagnosis of tetanus. The diagnosis of tetanus should always be made on clinical grounds. The laboratory tests only help in confirmation. Laboratory diagnosis may be made by demonstration of the Clostridium tetani by microscopy, culture, or by animal inoculation. Microscopy is unreliable and the demonstration of the typical drumstick bacilli in wounds itself is not diagnostic of tetanus. It can also be cultured on blood agar. The material to be inoculated is spread on the one half of a blood agar plate. The Clostridium tetani produces a swarming growth which may be detected on the opposite half of the plate after 1 to 2 days of incubations anaerobically. The material is also inoculated into 3 tubes of cooked meat broth, one of which is heated to 80 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes, the second for 5 minutes, and the third is left unheated. The purpose of heating for different periods is to kill the vegetative bacteria while leaving the undamaged the tetanus spores, which may vary widely in heat resistance. The cooked meat tubes are incubated at 37 degrees Celsius and subcultured on one half of blood agar plates daily for up to 4 days. And the Clostridium tetani may be isolated in pure culture by subculturing from the swarming edge of the growth. So the swarming property of the Clostridium tetani help us to isolate the pure form of tetani from the other half of the blood agar plate. And on gram staining, the Clostridium tetani will give you a drumstick or tennis racket like appearance. And this image shows the growth of Clostridium tetani in the blood agar plate, which can be isolated from the swarming edge of the growth. For identification and toxicity testing, blood agar plates having tetanus antitoxin that is around 1500 units per ml is spread over one half of the plate, and the Clostridium tetani strains are stab inoculated on each half of the plate, which is then incubated anaerobically for 2 days. Toxinic Clostridium tetani strains show hemolysis around the colonies only on the half without the antitoxins. That is, hemolysis will be only shown in the area of that blood agar which is not having the antitoxin. And for testing the toxicity in animals, a 2 to 4 day old cooked meat culture is inoculated into the root of the tail of a mouse. A second mouse that has received the tetanus antitoxin an hour earlier serve as the control. Symptoms develop in the test animal in 12 to 24 hours, beginning with stiffness in the tail, and the rigidity proceeds to the leg on the inoculated side, the opposite leg, trunk, forelimbs. In that order, it will be having that rigidity manner. And the animal dies within 2 days but may be killed earlier as appearance of tetanus is diagnosed. The nature of prophylaxis or prevention or treatment depends largely on the type of the wound and the immune status of the patient. The available methods of prophylaxis are surgical attention, antibiotics, immunization, which is both passive and active or combined immunization. Debridement is a procedure for treating a wound in the skin. It involves thoroughly cleaning the wound and removing all thickened skin or callus or infected or non-viable tissue and foreign debris from the patient. And the surgical prevention or prophylaxis aims at the removal of the foreign bodies and blood clots to prevent an anaerobic environment that will be favorable for the tetanus bacillus to grow. Antibiotic prophylaxis aims at destroying or inhibiting the tetanus bacilli in wounds so that the production of toxin is prevented. Long-acting penicillin injection is the drug of choice, and another alternative is the use of erythromycin, bacitracin, metronidazole, and after the antibiotic treatment, the other method is the active immunization with tetanus toxoid. So what do you mean by this toxoid? A toxoid is an inactivated toxin whose toxicity has been suppressed either by chemical or heat treatment, but the other properties such as the immunogenicity will be maintained. So in active immunization, tetanus toxoid have been used for preventing tetanus. The toxoid stimulates the body to make neutralizing antibodies against the binding component of the tetanus toxin. Once the antibody binds to the toxin can no longer bind to the receptors on the host cell membrane. Tetanus toxoid consists of a formaldehyde-treated toxin. There are two types of toxoids available: the adsorbed toxoid, that is the aluminum salt precipitated toxoid, and the fluid toxoid. Tetanus toxoid was developed by Descombe in 1924. Tetanus toxoid immunization were used extensively in the armed services during World War II. Although the rates of seroconversion are about equal, the adsorbed toxoid is preferred because the antitoxin response reaches high titers and is longer lasting than that following the fluid toxoid. The tetanus toxoid is given either alone or along with the diphtheria toxoid and the pertussis vaccine as a triple vaccine or the triple antigen vaccine. It is a combination of diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis. The vaccine stimulates the production of antibodies to immunize the body against the causative agents of these three diseases. The vaccine is also commonly known as DTP or DPT vaccine. A course of immunization consists of 3 doses of tetanus toxoid given intramuscularly with an interval of 4 to 6 weeks between the first 2 injections and the third dose 6 months later. A full course of immunization confers immunity for a period of at least 10 years. A booster dose of toxoid is recommended after 10 years. So now we already discussed about the prophylaxis method involving surgical attention, antibiotics and active immunization. Now let's see what's happening in passive immunization. In passive immunization, there is injection of tetanus antitoxin. Here, anti-tetanus serum from hyperimmune horses was used and the dose employed was 1500 units given subcutaneously or intramuscularly in non-immune persons soon after receiving any tetanus-prone injury. But some disadvantages have been found with using horses anti-tetanus serum because there are often chances of immune elimination and hypersensitivity. So human anti-tetanus globulin was preferred over equine or horse anti-tetanus serum. Antitoxin should be administered immediately. This will inactivate toxins in the blood. Wounds should be debrided to remove dead tissue or foreign bodies. And antibiotics should be given to inhibit the growth of Clostridium tetani further. A tetanus toxoid booster immunization should be given to patients who have not received one within the last 5 years. If spasm occurs, antispasmodic drugs should be used and respiration maintained by a breathing apparatus if necessary. In the absence of human ATS, if we are using equine or horse ATS, a sensitivity test has to be performed before using the antitoxin. In the case of human ATS, there is no anaphylactic shock and it's very safe, but the one thing that has a disadvantage is that it is costly. Now let's see the treatment of tetanus patients. Tetanus patients should be treated in hospitals, preferably in special units. The reason for isolating them is to protect them from noise and light because these things will provoke them convulsions. Convulsions means seizures. but the patient is not at all infectious and person-to-person transmission does not occur at all. The treatment consists of ensuring quiet controlling spasm and the maintaining airway by tracheostomy with intermittent positive pressure respiration and attention to feeding. Tracheostomy is a medical procedure that involves creating an opening in the neck in order to place a tube into a person's windpipe. The tube is inserted through a cut in the neck below the vocal cords, and this will allow air to enter the lungs and allow proper breathing. And the other method is providing human anti-tetanus immunoglobulin or TIG with intravenous therapy. Antibacterial therapy with penicillin or metronidazole should be started at once and continued for a week or more. ATS, that is anti-tetanus serum from hyperimmune horses, is also given intravenously in massive doses as part of the treatment. Several control trials have been undertaken to assess the value of antitoxin and the optimum dose. And the patients recovering from tetanus should receive a full course of active immunization, as an attack of the disease does not confer immunity. Second attacks of tetanus have also been recorded. So providing an active immunization is also important in the treatment of tetanus patients.